On tomorrow, we'll swear in our 47th President of the United States. And also, we'll recognize MLK Day, a day of service and also a new day for America. What will Trump 2.0 mean for America and the world? And what will you be doing on this day of service and as we swear in our new Commander-in-Chief? It's Stay the Water. I'm your host, Eric LaVille. We'll be right back with this special edition of the Presidential Inauguration and MLK Day Show. Once again, we want to thank you for joining us for Stay the Water, as you always do on every Sunday. We're blessed to be able to share with you what's happening, what's going on here in the Commonwealth, and of course, in the world. And we couldn't do this without your support, the support of our listeners, and the greatest alumni in the world. That's right, as we broadcast from the campus of the Norfolk State University, home of the Spartan Nation, from none other than WNSB Hot 91, the soul of VA. Today, I wanted to kind of do a special show because tomorrow is our inauguration of our 47th president and also MLK Day, which is now recognized as a day of service. During this time period of the year, you know that we have our General Assembly show where we talk about what's going on in the legislature, what's going on Capitol Hill, the governor's mansion, the AG's office. And of course, this year is a very important year because not only is it that we're have our General Assembly session, which we do every year, which started January 8th, but we're also electing our new executive officer, our governor, lieutenant governor, and attorney general, and all 100 seats in the House of Delegates is up for re-election. So it's an exciting year, exciting time. We're going to have lots to talk about, lots to keep you abreast of. But I wanted to just take this day, this show, because tomorrow is a very special day. Tomorrow is a day that the world witnesses the transition of power, where we have a peaceful transfer here in the United States for what's called our inauguration. Of course, a couple of weeks ago, we had a state funeral for our former president, 39th President Jimmy Carter, in which we saw a life well lived, not just while in office, but more specifically after office. Now we find ourselves with our inauguration, where we have a peaceful transfer of power. The election is over. It was November of last year, and of course, one side won and one side lost. So you have a lot of happy people and people that aren't happy. But at the end of the day, it's about our country, and it's about working within the system, the three-part system that we have, our executive house, our House of Congress, and also our Supreme Court. So this year, the inauguration falls upon MLK Day, Martin Luther King Jr. Day, which is recognized across the country now as a day of service. Now, of course, this is a very special day for many of us, and we know that this day was a hard-fought day as well. It was one of those days that, of course, everyone did not embrace, but as time went on, we see generations that are embracing it and also looking back at the life of Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King, what he stood for, and saying that this definitely was a man that stood on something that was right, something that was just, something that was not just constitutional, but something that was a higher calling, which all of us should strive for as well. But has this taken place before, where the inauguration has fallen upon MLK Day? And of course, we have a historic election where we have our 45th president being sworn in as our 47th president. So all of this is coming together, and it's a clash. And I thought of no other person than my good friend, award-winning journalist and author, to come on and talk about this, to lend his ideas and thoughts about this historic time period, none other than Dr. Will LaVeist. Brother LaVeist, how you feel today?
Hey, I'm feeling great, man. Always a pleasure to be with you, my brother.
Well, listen, we are definitely in the season of a new transition of power. Of course, President Trump, once he takes the oath of office on tomorrow around this time, will be our 47th president. And people are calling it Trump 2.0. We're going to get into what Trump 2.0 means for the country and the world, your thoughts, what's being written, speculation, trepidation, hope, and the like. But
gotta keep hope alive.
Gotta
Keep hope alive.
Hey, gotta keep hope alive. But in the spirit of this day that we have, it's also MLK Day, and I want to get your reflection on, first of all, MLK 2025, the dream, your perspective on it, and then also I want us to look at this inauguration and how this historic day comes together. What's your reflection on MLK?
Well, the irony is that last year I was blessed to have an opportunity to do a civil rights tour where I visited the Lorraine Hotel where Martin Luther King Jr. was assassinated. It's now, a museum. I had the opportunity to go down to Selma at the bridge where John Lewis and Hosea Williams, two of my Phi Beta Sigma fraternity frat brothers that led that march on Bloody Sunday and almost lost their lives. And then, subsequent to that, Martin Luther King led the march from Selma to Alabama successfully. And it was really surreal, and it was also sobering because Selma, if you go down in the community now, you see it as a very depressed community. You do have the markers for the historic moments that happen, and there's a memorial around that. But for the most part, it's a depressed community. So all of that hope that they were fighting for and opportunity that they were fighting for, it's not realized today. You look at the community, it's almost as if it's by design that the community is depressed. And then over by the Lorraine Hotel, it's just powerful to be there and to see where King was assassinated and to know of what he was talking about at the point that he was taken from us. He was talking about economic justice, right? That's what he was emphasizing and saying, that he saw where political gains that had been made had not necessarily led or were showing or were leading towards, economic equality, and that's what was needed. And so, he was preparing for the, Poor People's March and so forth. So when I reflect on King today, it's almost like he has become a martyr, he's become something to celebrate, as well he should, but also to monetize in many ways, which American culture tends to do, just monetize anything. And then doing so takes away from what the core values that King stood for and what he was striving towards. He was striving towards real change. So now we're kind of stuck in a symbolic mode in monetizing the civil rights movement and having the speeches and having the commemorances. But we got to ask ourselves seriously, how much have we actually achieved and really gained, which is what King and the others who fought alongside him and in front of him. And even when you go back to the past, that when you look at people like Frederick Douglass, or Harriet Tubman, they were fighting for real substantive change. So
absolutely.
That's where I'm stuck at is, how much has this been real substantive change and towards equality, particularly economic equality, and over symbolism and, let's commemorate it, let's service, let's do service. I mean, all of these things are good, but we need real substantive change. And I'm not sure that we're on track for that, for what the freedom fighters were really pushing for.
Well, Will, when you talk about substantive change and Harriet Tubman, Frederick Douglass, Sojourner Truth, and the many, many others that go nameless in history, but were fighting for change while on plantations, fighting for change during Jim Crow, during segregation, fighting for change during civil rights. I mean, if you look at our history of African Americans, where we are, and we can all say we're definitely in a better place than we were before we started. But to your point, we're not there. When you look at, you and I, we've talked about Booker T. Washington, W.B. Du Bois, and that debate, and how even Du Bois himself came along and said Booker T. Washington was right. in large part because it's about the economics. Now, of course, the method, you can disagree on the method of those two, and we all have our different methods to achieve. But economics is really the way for freedom, especially in America. It's about capitalism, but not just capitalism in its rawest form, but for us as African Americans, it's about making it and throwing the rope back to make sure others can get to that, help them to get to the level that they're supposed to be as well. Well, I've been asked a question, and I've seen writings ask the opinion. We know that inauguration is coming on the same day. It's tomorrow. Our 47th president. Like it, love it, whatever. He is our 47th president. And, of course, he gets the respect of the president and of holding that office. Now, of course, it's up to others and not just lawmakers but citizens to ensure that we hold him accountable. And he respects the office as well, just as every president takes that office and, in the words of Joe Biden, stand behind that or sit behind that resolute desk. But the question that I've been asked and I've seen is, what do you believe that President Trump will do in his administration to uphold the dream of MLK?
Well, I don't know if they're going to be consciously thinking about upholding the dream of MLK, because the dream of MLK was economic justice and equality and for all human beings. I'm not hearing from Trump's rhetoric and a lot of people in his camp, them kind of talking about it in that way. And in fact, the way that they talk about those types of things is very much in the derogatory way. They call it DEI or being woke. They've kind of twisted what was the true meaning of these terms, and kind of turned it into something else that's negative that you ask the average person on the street, they can't even define what they're talking about when they say why they're against woke or why they're against DEI. These things were designed, DEI is coming on the heels of affirmative action, which was put in place because people who otherwise would have been qualified were not allowed to have certain opportunities because of the color of their skin.
Right.
That's what that was about. Now it's turned into, well, you're discriminating against white males. Or woke, was in our community meant don't put your guard down. When you find yourself in environments, predominantly white environments, or where you can be killed, or you find yourself getting pulled over by a police officer, don't make any sudden moves that can, put you in further danger. That's what it meant to be woke. Stay awake. Don't put your guard down. Now they turned it around and turned it into something negative. So that has typically been, when you look at history, like I said, and I think we do a poor job in our community is tying things to history, because so much of what we are dealing with now was the same systematic issues that were dealt with in history and have been articulated and addressed by some of our greatest orators and authors, male and female.
Well,
so if this is like it's systematic. It's not really a lot of new stuff. And I think if we tied things better to history and understood how we overcame certain things in the past, we have a better understanding of how things need to be applied in these current times.
Well, Will, I mean, you literally kind of led right into what my comment I was going to make about history. With the misinterpretation of DEI, don't you think that is a direct reflection of not teaching true history and not embracing it?
Absolutely. 100%. Absolutely. And then also other elements, other people sort of bringing, their own agendas to certain things. And then now it starts getting twisted and watered down, and it becomes something else. And then, again, as you said, if you're not teaching history as each generation comes along, and they're not getting the foundational pieces from where some of these things came from, they're liable to think, oh, this is new.
Right.
Or, it is like, no, the DEI is affirmative action, or, DEI, you go back even further, you're talking about, anti-slavery movement. You're talking about showing respect and honor to indigenous people. I mean, that's what the root of all of this is, that people had previously not been afforded opportunities. Like, women didn't always have the right to vote. So this country has needed to be forced to make adjustments to open it up so that you have more equality for all of its citizens. But people when you don't know history, you don't know how it ties all together, you're more liable to just, start making things up, or to believe what your cousin said was posted on Facebook by his third cousin and somebody's friend, and now that becomes the truth.
Absolutely. And you talk about making things up. Well, we've got an era that was pushed in by our current president, that was our 45th, of alternative facts, right? So,
exactly.
And your truth as opposed to my truth. And again, we're at a point now where, again, truth is very important, and understanding it and ensuring that we know what our history is and embracing it only to look for a brighter day, which is what Dr. King's message is all about.
Exactly.
According to Commercial Appeal, it's not often that these two events coincide, and it's only happened one other time in history, as MLK Day, which is a relatively young holiday, has coincided with the inauguration. We know that the inauguration comes around every 4 years, and MLK Day falls on January 20th, which is an inauguration year, and of 2025, and it will be another inauguration year, in 2053. So we'll have till 2053 until we see this day again. So I'm praying that both of you and I will be around to talk about that in 2053.
Well, I hope so. I hope to be around. but the positive thing about it, Inauguration Day, it becomes an opportunity for the country to reflect on its past, on its current, and its future, and to say, okay, are we being who we say we aspire to be? Are we on track? Are we making progress? And so that's why I say you got to keep hope alive, because it does present that opportunity to reflect like that.
Absolutely.
And that's if people choose to do it, if people really choose to sit down and read and to process things and to apply critical thinking. It does present that opportunity, and especially when you see a peaceful transfer of power compared to how it is in a lot of other countries, where you don't have that. It's an opportunity to reflect and say, hey, man, we can continue to make a more perfect union.
Absolutely. Also, for our listeners, keep in mind that there has been a limited number of presidents that have their inaugurations held on January 20th. Matter of fact, 14 out of 46 of our presidents. Now, of course, 47, which would be 15 out of 47. However, since the King holiday has become a holiday, in 1983, there's been one other president in our history that was sworn in on Martin Luther King Jr. Day, and that is former President Bill Clinton. His second term, Clinton's inauguration, took place on January 20th, 1997. And for all of you history buffs, there were two other presidents that had elections on Monday, January 20th, and they were Franklin Delano Roosevelt and Richard Nixon, 1941, 1969, respectively. But please note that Dr. King Day had not been established at that particular time.
Right.
And for those that, again, that want to delve into the history, Barack Obama could also be counted as having a half MLK Day inauguration. On his second term, January 20th was on a Sunday. So there was a private ceremony held on Sunday where he was sworn in, and a public ceremony the following day, which was January 21st, 2013. So just so happened to be Dr. King on that day of his private ceremony. So while he started his second term on Sunday, January 20th, the public ceremony was actually held on Martin Luther King Jr. Day. So with that being the case, tomorrow is going to be a great day. So a day of service or a day of reflecting and watching the inauguration of our 47th president. We call it Trump 2.0, Will. Now, I mentioned it earlier that some have hope, some have jubilation, some have trepidation. Whatever the case may be, he is the president. According to The Hill, Trump 2.0, they believe is going to be radically different and could be more potent. Now, you and I were alive, and we were locked into Trump 1.0. And according to The Hill, it says that Trump knows more about how Washington works now, but Trump 2.0 is set up to better succeed. And the president-elect is equipped with a highly capable chief of staff, Susie Wiles, who has infused more discipline into his operation. As a matter of fact, according to Sean Spicer, we remember him, he served as Trump press secretary in 2017. He said when it comes to the three big things, the people, the process, and the priorities, he said these guys are in a totally different league than they were in 2016. He said it's not just lessons learned, but it has to do with the environment, noting that Trump this time has the full backing of the Republican Party and is entering the mandate of a popular vote victory. Will, that's a lot to unpack.
Yeah, I mean, that is a lot, I think when you kind of tie in history and you say, after the Civil War, things were pretty bad. The country, survived that. Or after President Kennedy was assassinated, and all the upheaval that was going on in the 1960s, and I would have to think I remember my parents talking about it had to be a pretty scary time, Vietnam War, and the country, came through that. So for me, as a New Yorker who grew up watching Trump, right, and seeing sort of his career and reading about him in the papers and so forth, Trump 1.0 was, I thought that was out of the question, because he's been trying to run for president. A lot of people don't recognize this. He's been trying to run for president early 2000s.
Yeah.
He was trying to run. Again, people don't know that. They just think, Trump became interested in the presidency when you first saw him on The Apprentice. A lot of people don't know that. So I referenced that because he always had an issue with the media. He used the media to his advantage to get attention, and then he was always at odds with the media. So being a person in the media, none of what I'm seeing and have been seeing going back and forth with Trump is new, right? But I do agree that him coming in now the second time around, he's got a clearer sense of how things operate. And so I think the people around him, or the politicos who the first time around, right, were trying to influence him and get certain things done, I think those people around him, right, are going to be more effective at utilizing him to get certain things done. And so when you come back to that, what was that? The project 2025.
Yeah, which we're going to delve into very soon.
Yeah, I think people really need to be looking at that and saying, okay, because that's, as he has said, that's the blueprint. And then he has some things because, again, he's a very established, been at this for a while guy. He has some ideas about what he wants to accomplish for himself, ego-wise, business-wise. There are things he wants to do, and he's certainly going to get done. But I think people would be wise to look at Project 2025 and a lot of the others who are around him and who may have more of an ideology about what they think the country should be. I think people should look carefully at that. But I think also people should realize that we still have a government of checks and balances. And even though he may have a majority in the House and the Senate. There are still rules to the House and the Senate where the minority is able to obstruct things. We saw that in the Obama administration, right, in the first term, and in the future, and in the second term, right? So it's not like it's this grand lost cause, and that's why I mentioned, Civil War, country coming out of the Civil War. It's not, or how the state of the country in the late 1960s, 70s, or even after Nixon with Watergate. It's not this grand lost cause. So I would tell listeners to still, have a sense of hope, understand how your government works, and get engaged and get your money right. Get your money right and take care of your own household and educate your mind, about what's going on and how things work.
Listen, you and I both talk about getting your money right. And speaking of money right, according to The Hill, we were talking about people and Trump's team. He's retained outsiders that appeal to a certain demographics of wealth. As a matter of fact, Elon Musk is now the richest person in the world, is on his team. Other tech and other tech business titans, including Jeff Bezos and Mark Zuckerberg, are signaling that they want to work with Trump, which underscores how the next 4 years won't be like the president-elect's first 4 years. It's also been noted and reported that he has now included more billionaires in his circle and nominated as part of his cabinet than any other president in our history. Well, for a government that's built on for the people, by the people, do you think balling for billions will impact that?
Of course. I would like for the working class voters, white, Hispanic, those who, in unions, who jumped on the MAGA train, right, then voted for him because Trump said the economy, alone will fix it. I would like to ask them, for them to ponder, what is the likelihood of policies being put forth to benefit you when his team is surrounded by, people of such a different social class than you? What's the likelihood of that? And that's what the Democratic Party failed to message, because, quite frankly, the Democratic Party hasn't done a good job of representing the best interests of working people, right?
Right.
So, you wanted to punish them, right? For Biden, your administration, you didn't do right by us. So now you vote in the candidate who was telling you from the very beginning that this is my crowd, the Billionaires Club, and this is who's going to run the country. So you hear people saying, well, let the businessman run the country like a bit. Really? Well, if you run the country like a business, the whole point of business is to maximize profits and to reduce expenses. And the biggest chunk of expenses comes from where, Brother Claville, is salary and benefits.
Absolutely.
So that means if you're going to minimize expenses, I'm minimizing your job. So I don't understand what their thinking process is, or the folks who wanted to punish Kamala Harris because of the United States view towards the Israel-Palestine war, right, that's happening. And so you had Muslims in the Midwest saying we're going to do a protest or a punishment vote, but you vote in the guy who's saying I am going to stand with it. It's mind-boggling to me.
Yeah.
The level of critical thinking in common sense. And this is not something you need to be a PhD to understand. This is conversation
absolutely
that should be clear in the factories.
Well,
in barbershops.
Well, Will,
you know what I mean?
Look, we got a lot to unpack over the next 4 years, so you'll definitely be back. As we look at this, do more specials and just delve into what's happening. But keep in mind that over the past 4 years, he survived legal challenges.
Yes.
He returned to power in spite of. He's been indicted. He's been convicted. So we do have one of our first convicted felons as president. And he enters the White House as a lame duck because there is no reelection coming. So he's focused on his priorities and making sure that this presidency is definitely one for the history books. But look, we're out of time. We're going to come back. We're going to have you back. But I want our listeners to have a great MLK Day and also witness the inauguration, because it's not about the person, but about our country, a peaceful transfer of power, because the whole is more important than individual parts for these United States of America. Until next time, be good, be great. God bless, and we'll see you next week.
Hi, I'm Carrie Washington, and you're listening to State of the Water with award-winning host Dr. Eric Clavel.